So, hello everyone. Welcome to Willard Library. Today's virtual program is called Every Stone Tells a Story. And with us today, and I welcome Mr. Daniel Earl. One of the most common topic that I see on a lot of genealogy websites and Facebook pages that I follow is about cemeteries and grave sites. So I thought that it would be a good opportunity for Mr. Earl to give us some information. I also look at it as it's a perfect time to get out and about and take some walks, and a perfect place to do it is at a cemetery. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Earl, and he's going to give us some information about genealogy and cemeteries.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you so much for having me and for tuning in. This is fantastic. I love talking about cemeteries. They're one of my favorite places to be. And cemeteries for us as family historians really connect us in a way that other places don't. I mean, we can go to an archive, we can go to a library and see a record, but our ancestors often didn't even touch that record. It was made completely independent of them. But with a cemetery, we know that our loved ones, at least the loved ones of that deceased ancestor, were there at some point. And so it's a very sort of interesting place for us as genealogists, where we can feel that connection to our ancestors that we don't get in other places. And so I like to start off with a couple of examples from my kids. And if they were here, they'd be super embarrassed by these older pictures of them. But this is my son, Ross. He's now 13. So this is when he was just an itty bitty. But his name is Roswell Earl. And so we play a game as a family where we'll go to a cemetery and the kids get points for every marker they find that has their name on it or any part of their name on it. And so Roswell usually misses out. He may find an Earl somewhere. His middle name is Harmon, so occasionally he'll find that, but he rarely finds a Roswell. So when we go to the cemetery where his namesake ancestor, Roswell A. Earl, is buried, he goes immediately to that stone and touches it, and he goes, 2 points. Right? So he's super excited because he feels that connection. And then this is my now 7-year-old daughter, Savannah, and this is her visiting the grave of her grandfather. So my father-in-law that passed away several years ago. And she's had picked one of the flowers there off to the side in the little urn and was holding it up so that Papa could smell the rose, right? And so, again, cemeteries just connect us in a way that other places don't. And so these things are worth our time. They're worth our study and effort to preserve. And this is a great time of year to do it. Like Melissa said, it's a great time to go out, get some fresh air, stretch your legs. We're hopefully on the back end of the pandemic. And being able to move forward, and we're getting some more ability to do things. But this is also a great time to begin and do any cemetery cleaning projects that you want to do. So what are we going to cover today? Well, we're going to look at 10 myths about cleaning grave markers. And so I hear a lot of people talk about a lot of different things. So we're going to talk about 10 of those myths. We're going to talk about the proper cleaning of grave markers, how to do it the right way. We're going to look at what you should have in your cleaning kit. If you're interested, what we can do for further study, some books that I recommend. And if we have time, we'll go over cemetery safety. So I'm going to move pretty quickly through the presentation because I want to make sure that we have time for questions at the end. So the good news is at the end of the presentation, I will have my contact information up. So if I was moving too quick and you missed something, you can email me and I'll be happy to answer that question. If you want me to go over something with you again, one-on-one, we can definitely do that. I'm happy to accommodate anything because I am super enthusiastic and super passionate about preserving our cemeteries. And so let's jump right into 10 common myths about cleaning grave markers. So the first myth that I like to talk about is that stone is stone, right? That everybody thinks that all stones are sort of created equal, that there's this, equality among stones. That's just not the case. So not all stone is equal. Some of it is more fragile than others. Some stones like granite and marble are going to be more durable than things like sandstone or slate. And each type of stone is going to have its own unique kind of cleaning method. So you really need to be able to identify the kind of stone that you're looking at. If you just look at a grave marker and you go, well, there's gray ones and there's the sort of pink colored ones, that's not sufficient. You need to be able to say, oh, this is a granite marker, or this is marble, or this is limestone, or some other type of thing. So if you're not sure, don't do it. Don't clean it. Don't touch it. Don't do anything to it. Because if you're not sure and you use the wrong kind of thing to clean it, you can do irrevocable damage. That cannot be undone. That will destroy that marker for future generations. Okay. The next myth is that water is water. That's not the case. Water has varying levels of acidity, and depending on your location, can even have chemical additives added to it. And so you want to make sure that when you're cleaning a grave marker that you're using water that you would drink, right? Or potable water is the minimum standard that you should be using. It doesn't have to be distilled. It doesn't have, but that would be preferred. But if you wouldn't drink it, don't do it, right? So if you wouldn't run up and just put your mouth on a sprinkler head at a golf course because they're using reclaimed water, then don't use that for the grave marker, because that can have chemicals that can stain, things like that. If there is a local source of water within the cemetery, test the pH if you can, right? So you can get pH testing strips, and we'll talk about that later on. But you can get that and test the water yourself to see if it's acidic or basic, because basic water can be just as bad as acidic water. So if you're not sure, don't use the water. Okay. Now, I would hope that the next myth would be obvious. Unfortunately, I've seen it enough that it's clearly not. So I don't mean to insult anyone's intelligence with this one, but sandblasting and pressure washing is fine for hard stones and metal. That is just simply not true. And you make babies sad when you think things like that. Okay. You should never sandblast or pressure wash a marker. I watched a YouTube video of a guy using a pressure washer to clean a gravestone, and sure enough, it got it sparkling clean, but he also removed part of the face of the stone as he did that. So please don't use sandblasting, pressure washing, or any other type of cleaning other than what we're going to talk about today. I've heard crazy things for this next one, so that you can use shaving cream, rug cleaner, just all kinds of crazy things that that are just crazy. So if they make deodorant that's pH balanced for a woman, okay, don't use things on a grave marker that it's not intended for, right? So just don't do it, right? So don't use any kind of chemical that was not formulated to clean anything other than the chemical it was formulated to clean, okay? So for example, you probably don't want to use toilet cleaner to clean your toothbrush, right? So if it's not designed for what you're using it to clean, don't use it, okay? So don't come and say, hey, Dan, can I use phosphoric acid to clean it? No, you can't, right? Can I use this chemical etching compound that we use to etch glass? No, you can't use that. It will clean it, but it will also destroy it, okay? So another myth that I hear often is that, oh, I go clean my grandfather's grave every year, right? Don't do that, because you can over clean a grave marker. You can do it too often, and if you clean it too often, you're going to be wearing down the surface. You want to make sure that the stone has time to recover, has a time to rest, dry out, and just sort of begin the process of sort of creating natural patinas that can be beneficial. So cleaning it about every 5 years, so 4 to 6 years is going to be just about enough, right? Some types of markers, especially something that's called white bronze, that's made out of a type of zinc oxide, it never needs to be cleaned. And we'll look at an example or a picture of one of those later on. But you never want to clean that, because if you clean off that zinc oxide, which is the same stuff that like lifeguards put on their nose that keeps their noses from getting burnt off by the sun, that's the same thing. And you don't want to remove that because otherwise you're going to damage the marker. So if you show up to a cemetery to clean something and it looks clean and you didn't clean it, don't clean it again. Just leave it alone, right? Let it go. Be like Elsa. Just let it go. Walk away. Okay. Another myth that I hear often is that people will say, oh, I've been scrubbing and scrubbing and scrubbing, but it just doesn't look like new. It should look like new when I'm done, right? No. Even after you're cleaning a grave marker, it should retain its natural historic patina. It should still look old. The goal of cleaning a grave marker is simply to prevent it from degrading further. It will, over time, begin to look old. And that's a natural geological process of the stone naturally weathering over time. We don't want to stop that. We don't want to intervene in that process, because we can actually speed it up by intervening. We want to prevent damage from biological and chemical damage is what we're trying to do. So, and again, some of the patinas are actually protective and we don't want to do it. So if you're not sure when you should stop cleaning, that's the time to stop cleaning. If you're like, should I be done? The answer is yes. Yes, you should be done. Okay. Number 7. So I hear this often, and people say, oh, I bring aluminum foil and I push it into the little cracks and crevices, right? And they like, then I take it and then I pull it out carefully and I put plaster of Paris in there and I get an exact replica of the stone, but in relief, right? All metal can scratch stone. Even aluminum can scratch a stone, depending, really not even on the type of stone. It will scratch the surface. And I'm not talking big gouges or gashes. I'm talking about small scratches that will allow water, chemicals, lichen, other things to begin to grow and dig their roots deep into the stone. And we don't want that, because that's going to ultimately destroy the stone, right? So if you want a reproduction, take a lot of pictures, get a 3D printer software program, splice it together, create a 3D model of your ancestor's gravestone, and then 3D print it if you want to have something, right? Which you can do, not hard. Okay. The next one is that metal tools are okay. I've heard people that bring, oh, I use the metal brush I use to clean my barbecue grill, or I use metal shovels and trowels. I bring a metal putty knife to scrape things off. Please don't do that. It's not your barbecue grill. Okay. Don't use metal probes to find sunken graves. If you're going to do that, use a wooden dowel rod. Okay. That's not sharp at the end. That's dull at the end. You want to just push it through and see if there's something there, right? And you don't want one that's more than 8 inches. You're not going to have to go more than 8 inches down. Okay. So don't use metal shovels or anything like that to remove grass or vegetation. If you need to, right, use plastic, fiberglass, or wood tools. If you do need to clear away brush from the edge of a marker, I always bring a piece of cardboard and I'll slide it down between the bush and the marker and then start trimming. So that way, if I accidentally get bumped or a bird flies out of the bush or a snake or something and I'm startled, I don't go chink and just smash right into the stone. It'll hit that cardboard first, and the cardboard will take the brunt of it instead of the stone, right? Do everything that you can. So if it's made of metal, don't clean with it. Okay. So number 9 is it's okay to remove nearby shrubbery and vines. And this one is a general no, but sometimes it's okay. So some plants that are planted around a grave marker were planted at the time of the burial. Okay. And they can represent what are called heirloom species that do not exist anywhere else. So before you cut things or remove things, get a good field guide to plants. And if you can clearly identify that plant is not an heirloom species, then go ahead with caution, right? I would even, since most of us are probably going to be here in Michigan, where we have lots of extensions from MSU and other places, or your local county commissioners or whomever you can call, to come out and take a look to see if it's okay for you to cut that back. Okay. So if you're not sure what it is, don't pick it, pluck it, or cut it down. Okay. And again, you can call a botanist from a local university and offer them pizza. It's surprising how much you can get done with pizza or donuts around here in life in general, right? Now, the last one is probably going to upset some folks, okay? The last myth that we're going to talk about is that grave rubbings do not damage grave markers. That, unfortunately, is not correct. Doing a rubbing does damage a grave marker, okay? So just the action of rubbing is going to do minute damage to the letters, to the structures of the stone, right? Now, I know what you're thinking. Like, well, if I just do it once for one of my ancestors, it's not a big deal, right? Well, not so, because some rubbing papers will leave a residue when it's pressed against the stone, which creates sort of an unbreathable layer, and it fills in the pores of the stone, because stone is very porous. It may not look like it to us, but if you look at it microscopically, it is very, very porous. It absorbs water, it absorbs air, it absorbs chemicals. And when you put a layer of something over that and the stone can't breathe, then that stone begins to crumble, okay? Also, some people will use tape to tape the piece of paper to the stone. If you do that, that tape's going to leave residue, okay? If you're not careful, you could do an over rub, right? That means that you're getting that wax crayon or the graphite from your pencil or whatever it is that you're using, hopefully not pen or paint, but both of which are very, very difficult to get off, okay? Almost impossible with graphite. So just say no to making rubbings of grave markers. Take pictures instead. We'll talk about taking photographs of grave markers a little bit later and what you can do when you get home to enhance those photos. Okay, so those were some myths of how to clean grave markers. So let's talk about how we can properly clean grave markers. Okay, so we talked about some things not to do. So now we're going to talk about what to do. So what you should do is have a 4-phase approach, okay? So I know this is sounding less and less fun, right? Because now you're like, oh, it's a 4-phase approach. Who wants me to do 4 things to clean a grave marker? And yes, I do, okay? So I am taking this, a lot of the information that I'm getting is not only from my own experience as someone that has cleaned a lot of grave markers and has done a lot of work in cemeteries and who has done a lot of cemetery restoration projects, but this is also coming from the Veterans Administration on the care and maintenance of veterans' grave markers. Okay, those guys know what they're doing, and so when I say a 4-phase approach, just know I'm in good company. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is a pre-cleaning survey, then you're going to do site photography, then cleaning and repair, and then follow-up. See, that's not so bad, right? So the pre-cleaning survey, site photography, cleaning and repair, and then following up after you're done with everything. So we're going to go through each of these 4 phases and what you should do as a part of that phase. Okay, so now we're going to start with the pre-cleaning survey. Okay, so this is actually not too far from where I live. This picture is of a fallen marker that's split into 3 pieces. Okay. And so we actually had to dig part of it out. So let's talk about the pre-cleaning survey and what you should do as a part of that. So the first thing that you want to do with the pre-cleaning survey is determine who owns the property and have permission from them to be on the property. Okay. I've started a project and then sought permission from the property owner, only to have the property owner tell me no if it's on private property. Okay. If it's a public cemetery, you want to find out what the regulations are, right? Some privately owned cemeteries may prevent you legally from being able to clean a marker. They have to do it themselves, okay? So always know the rules and regulations. There's nothing more embarrassing than having to call one of your children or grandchildren to have them bail you out of jail because you did something illegal and you weren't aware. So always do your legal homework first, okay? Then create an action plan. You want to be able to estimate the costs, the manpower involved, and et cetera, right? So you want to count the cost before you begin. Some cleaning projects are just as simple as, hey, I'm going to go clean a few stones in the cemetery, and I'm just going to need the chemicals and permission, and that's it. Right? Those are relatively inexpensive. If you're doing a full restoration of a cemetery to its historic look, and you're resetting stones and you're moving things around and you need heavy equipment and things like that and lots of people, boy, the cost of that can go up exponentially, right? I did one where I did an estimate where it was into the several thousands of dollars to do everything that this historical society wanted to do for their cemetery. And they said, boy, we just can't do that. And so we had to prioritize what are the most important things first, right? And you always want to create a plan B, right? So when on the day that you go to actually do the work, if there's an active burial next to where you're planning on cleaning, what do? Do you say, oh, I'm sorry for your loss, and start cleaning the marker right next to their loved one? No, you just wait and have a plan B. Go get some pizza or go do something else and then come back when you're done, right? So always have that plan B, okay? So moving on with the cleaning survey, the pre-cleaning survey, you want to determine what is on the material, okay? If it is something that's geological, right, like it's the natural weathering or patina that we want to keep, right? Is it biological? Is it mold, moss, lichen, bird poo, sap from a tree, things like that? Is it from humans, right? Is it soot or residue from a previous cleaning, right? So sometimes people ask, well, what's an easy way to tell the difference between carbonized soot, the sort of blackening that happens on a stone in urban areas, and biological material, right? So the easiest way, okay, is to take a cotton swab, like the kind that you would use, you're not supposed to, but the kind that some people use to clean out their ears, right? You take one of those and you just dip a tiny little bit of bleach on it. You're not washing things down with bleach. You're just taking a tiny little bit of bleach and you rub it on a small, discrete area away from the inscription and things like that. Then you give it some time, right? Like 20 minutes. And then you come back. If it changes color, if it's gotten lighter, or if it clears up completely, it was biological. If there's no change, it's carbon soot. Okay? So again, just a little bit of bleach will tell you if it's biological or if it's carbon soot. Okay? And then again, just a little bit, give it some time, and you're good to go. Then you want to create a plan to remove the material, right? You go, oh, okay, I'm dealing with largely biologicals that are on these stones, which is going to be the case probably 80% of the time. And I'm just going to go ahead. I just need a standard cleaning solution to go ahead and take care of that. Okay. Now, site photography. Okay. So this is a cemetery in the middle of a cow pasture, actually. And so when you're doing site photography, before you do anything, before you do any cleaning or repairs, you want to take a picture of everything. Okay. From every angle, you want to take wide shots of the whole cemetery. I usually try to go to a corner of the cemetery and take a picture of a large section of it, and then try to say, okay, well, what didn't I see? If you can do a panorama with your phone, that's fantastic. Some phones allow you to do that. If you have a wide angle lens on a traditional camera, fantastic, right? Every angle that you can, right? Try to get a picture of everything. And if you can get a large object in the background, like if you look at the picture that I'm using here as an example, you can see that there's mountains in the background. This is in sort of Pennsylvania. And so you can, and it's a part of Pennsylvania that you can only access from New York. You actually have to drive down, you have to drive up into New York and then come back down to get there. But those mountains aren't going anywhere. So if I come back, this picture was taken probably 6 years ago. And so if I come back in another 4 years, so 10 years, those trees may have fallen in a storm. Trees aren't great things to use, but those mountains are going to be there. Buildings generally tend to last quite a while, things like that. Now, what you want to do to get a good shot, if you're taking a picture of a specific marker, is to get a piece of cardboard, like the trifold kind that kids use for science fair projects, right? It's like $1, $3. And you want to cover one side in aluminum foil, the reflective side, because aluminum foil is reflective on one side and dull on the other. You want to use the reflective side, okay? And then you can use it. You can bring a friend, and then they can hold it and reflect sunlight onto the marker, and that will allow you to see things clearly, redirect the light and stuff like that. Or they can use it to block the sun. If the sun's just bleaching out the entire photo, they can hold it in a way that blocks the sunlight and casts a shadow over the marker to help you get a good picture. Okay, so for $3 of cardboard and maybe $1.50 of aluminum foil and some tape or glue stick, you've got everything that you need, right, for really good site photography. Okay, you want to have a small ruler or a measuring stick. So we saw that with the marker at the very beginning that I showed you, where it's got I had a measuring tape out so you could see what it is. I have a small wooden one that's about 6 inches that I set on markers or set next to markers as I'm taking pictures. And again, you try to get a reference object in the background to assist you in finding that later on. Now, sometimes people will use something like chalk dust or something else to bring out the features of a marker. Please don't do that. That chalk dust will get into the pores of the stone and not allow it to breathe, right? So just like I wouldn't tell my teenage son to take olive oil and wipe it all over his skin and then go out and run a mile, right? And then come back, because that's going to block his pores and it's going to get infected and he's going to get zits and right? Not good stuff. And so we want to allow the stone to be able to breathe and not block the pores of the stone. Okay. And so if you have an iPhone or smartphone, right, like I do right here, you want to download an app that's called Billion Graves. Okay. And that will allow you to digitally preserve the cemetery. Okay. It's also a great project for if you're involved in Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, church youth groups, things like that. Any group of young people that are trying to find a service project, this can be a great way to get them involved in this project, right? So this can be a multi-generational project of getting a cemetery restored. And they can be the ones going around taking pictures, doing all kinds of fun things with the smartphone that they're already going to be using anyway. So now just a quick word on the importance of taking photographs. And so this is a photo that was enhanced using a software called VividPix. If you're not familiar with VividPix, you should be. And so not only does it restore photos of grave markers, it also restores all kinds of other photos, and it uses artificial intelligence. So you don't even need to use your own intelligence. It's great. So this was a marker in Pennsylvania, and you can see that there's a tree growing behind it. This was taken in October of 1964. Now, in the intervening 40 plus, now 50 plus years, 60 plus years, that tree has grown considerably, and a branch of that tree fell off and toppled and crushed and broke the marker, and the county just removed it. So when I went there 6 years ago, that marker is not there anymore. Okay. So what do you do? Well, you can then take these old photographs, and even though this was a faded Polaroid, VividPix allowed me to bring the colors back out and preserve this photo in a way that allows me to see what was on the marker in 1964. So 1964, just so you know, is about 15 years before I was born. And so I'm dealing with stuff that was created before I was even on this earth, and I'm using that to solve family history mysteries, right? Which is awesome. Okay, so don't discount the photography part of it. It's important for you to take pictures. It's important step for you to participate in when it comes to preserving a cemetery digitally. Okay, so now let's talk about cleaning and repair. Okay, so this can be difficult for some people, because sometimes I think people want to do more than they can do or that they should do. Okay, so let's talk about some basic principles, right? The first one, just like any doctor will tell you, the first principle of medicine is to do no harm. Okay, not cleaning a stone and taking a picture of it is better than cleaning it and damaging it. Okay, so I would rather you do nothing than do something that damages the stone. Okay, the goal is to not get something to look like new. You want it to look old still, right? So I use something that I call the laxative approach. Okay, so just like you wouldn't start off taking the highest dose of a laxative, because that can cause some issues, you want to start with the lowest dose first and work your way up. And it's the same thing with cleaning a grave marker. You want to start with the least aggressive approach first, and then get more aggressive if needed. Okay, so use the simplest, the easiest stuff first. If that doesn't work, then come back with another little bit more intense, and then keep working your way up the ladder. Before, don't just come in with a wrecking crew and a sandblaster, right? Patience is your friend. If you're not sure if you're patient, just ask your spouse if you're married, right? Or family member, whomever, right? Now, if you're not sure if you've got the patience for this, ask them. If I asked my wife, she'd be like, no, you do not. Okay. So more cleaning and repair. Here's some don'ts. Okay. So do not try to move a stone. Most stones weigh around 170 pounds per square foot. So you take a stone that's a foot by a foot, right? That's going to weigh 170 pounds. Right now, some of you don't weigh 170 pounds. Okay. But that 1 foot by 1 foot block of stone is going to weigh 170 pounds on average, right? So a big guy like me, I might be able to pick up and move a small marker, but it is not going to be easy, right? I have moved pieces of markers before, and I thought, oh, this isn't going to be that heavy. And I'm moving 100-pound piece that I am moving from one part of a cemetery without any of other equipment than my own arms to my car to bring it back to the garage to fix, right? That's a lot of carrying over the course of maybe a quarter of a mile. I'm definitely getting my steps and my exercise in, right? So don't try to move it, okay? Because if it falls on you or you drop it on your foot, not only could it break the stone, it's probably going to break your foot, okay? And that's the last thing I want, is people going out and getting hurt, okay? So under no circumstance should you apply a sealant to a stone, okay? So I've seen actually what we call ghost stones, where somebody applied a plastic seal to a stone, and that prevented the stone from being able to breathe. Water got up inside the stone, which happens because, remember, stone is porous. It's going to pull water up. And then that stone disintegrated, and all that's left is sort of this plastic hollow stone that's not even a stone anymore, with just a bunch of dust inside of it. And so never apply a sealant to a stone. That may work for teeth, does not work for stones, right? If there is going to be freezing or sub-freezing temperatures forecasted within 3 days after you're cleaning, do not clean the stone. This is why this time of year is the best, because this is Michigan, so I say probably, not going to have freezing temperatures or sub-freezing temperatures in the next 3 days. Okay, probably, but check the forecast. This is Michigan, guys. It can snow at any time. Okay, if you live somewhere like Arizona, or you live in Florida or wherever, yeah, you're probably not going to get sub-freezing temperatures any time of the year. So you're probably good to do it when it's not so blasted hot out, but still check. Remember, no freezing, sub-freezing temperatures. My rule of thumb, if it's going to drop below 35 degrees, if that's the forecast, I'm definitely not going to be cleaning, okay? Really, I get skeptical at 40, right? Because I've lived in Michigan long enough to know that the weathermen and women aren't always exactly accurate. So I want to give myself as much of a buffer as I can when it comes to that bottom temperature, right? I definitely don't want it to get to freezing. Because what happens to water when it freezes? It expands. And so you get a tiny little droplet of water inside that stone that freezes, and it goes, and then it'll go, and then it freezes again, and it leaves a bigger space. And what's going to happen? It's going to invite more of its watery friends in there, and that's going to freeze, and all of a sudden, and it breaks the stone, right? So don't do that. Okay. So what do we do now? So now it comes time to actually clean and repair. So the first thing is you need to know your stones, but never take that knowledge for granted. Okay. So you really do need to know the stones that you're working with, right? Because different types of stone are going to age at different rates, and that different types of stone require different kinds of care. All right, there we go. For some reason, it was a little bit of a delay. So if you're unfamiliar with how to clean the type of material that you're on, what just happened? Okay, that's weird. It just decided to close down. So hang on a second.
I'm sorry, but I'm laughing over your joke. Don't take it for granted.
Right. I have no idea what happened. I clicked a button, and then all of a sudden it just decided to not be a presentation anymore. So hang on, let me pull it up again, and we'll jump right back in where we left off.
So I just while you're working on that, I did put the syllabus in the Facebook comments, and it's also on our webpage. If you click on the program box or the program link on our webpage, and then go to the program announcement box or the description box, it'll have the link to Dan's syllabus. I apologize I didn't mention that before. I do have a question. Where can I find this program after live streaming? We have it stays on our Facebook page, and you can also find it on our YouTube channel. So if you have questions about that, just call the information desk and we can help you with that. So
perfect. All right, so I got it up. I'm just getting back to where we were in the presentation. All right. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to start from the current slide. And there we go. Okay. All right. So like I was saying, never take that knowledge for granted. All right. Why is it? This is going to do it again. I don't want that to happen. Okay. All right. So if you're unfamiliar with the type of material that the stone is, or that the marker is, and you're not sure how to clean it, first thing you can do is get educated, or you can hire a professional, right? There are people like me that go out and will clean stones and will take money to do it. Okay. So I'm happy to do that. And just know that it will definitely cost you more, because you have to pay for my gas and time and all the, chemicals and all that kind of stuff. But you can get educated or have a professional come out and do it. Okay. So before you begin cleaning, okay, here's what you need to do if you're going to do it on your own, which is recommended. But before you do it, this is what you need to know. You need to determine if the stone is sturdy enough to clean. Okay. So you want to look to see if there's big cracks, if there's flakes, or what in geological terms is called cleavage. So if you're looking at a piece of slate and it's looking like it's starting to separate, don't clean it. Okay. Don't do anything. If it's a big sturdy marker, you can check for hollow spots by just by knocking on the stone, just gently. You're not, trying to pretend you're the FBI and you're going in somebody's house, right? If any of those things are present, don't start cleaning it. If there's a big hollow spot, don't start cleaning it, right? If those things are absent, you're good to proceed, right? And so what you want to do before you start cleaning the whole marker is you want to test the cleaning method that you're going to use on a very small patch of it away from the inscription, right? Because again, we don't want to do anything to that inscription. And then allow it to dry and walk away for at least 1 week before you're cleaning the rest of the marker, which I know is not always possible, okay? So in the absence of ideal, at least give it a few hours to see if something terrible happens, okay? Like if it starts bubbling, not good, okay? If you clean a tiny little patch and you come back and that tiny little patch is missing after an hour, don't clean the whole stone, okay? So test your cleaning method on a small area first before you start going to do anything, okay? So now we're finally to the part where you actually get to clean it, okay? So let me appropriately take a drink here, because the first thing you're going to do is get the entire monument wet before you start cleaning it. That's right, the entire thing, okay? And I mean, you're going to deluge this thing. You want it sopping, hopping wet, okay, before you start. And you're going to start at the bottom and circumnavigate your way to the top. So circumnavigate means go around. You're going to go around, start at the bottom, and then work your way up to the top, okay? So you're going to use a soft bristled natural fiber brush to clean the monument. You can pick those up at most hardware stores, right? You want to use natural fibers when you can, because unnatural fibers, that sounds weird, are potentially could do some damage, right? And before you use the brush, make sure that the brush itself is wet before touching it to the stone, and rinse it out frequently. I typically have a rinse bucket where I will scrub, 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 rinse, 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 scrub, 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 rinse, 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 scrub, 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 rinse, 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 and so on, right? You get the idea. This is very methodical, okay? So the whole marker's wet, your brush is wet, cleaning, cleaning, clean, right? So what do? You rotate the brush in a circular motion, not side to side, right? Because side to side, you could knock a piece off. Circular motion, small circles, probably not going to happen. You want to use light to medium pressure. You're not pushing hard into the stone to scrub, right? You're just using light, medium pressure, right? So imagine you're giving the stone a back massage, right? Sometimes it's appropriate if you're like an athlete and they've got to really work on your back or something like that, that you're going to get a really hard sort of sports massage. Most of the time you want a nice, gentle, easy back massage, right? And this is where patience is going to pay off, right? You need to be patient and methodical. If it doesn't get all clean the first time, you can come back and clean it. It's okay, right? And again, remember, you're not trying to make it look brand new. You're trying to make it look cleaner than it was, okay? When you're done, when you've done the entire marker, top to bottom or bottom to top, right? Starting in one corner away from the inscription, working your way around, okay? When you're done, you're going to re-wet the whole thing. You're going to rinse it off when you're done, okay? So you're getting it wet once, cleaning it using a wet brush, and then you're rinsing it off again, right? Because that final rinse with water will help get off any residual chemicals and things like that, okay? So that requires a lot of water, okay? Which is why if there's a local source, you want to test it and so on, okay? So what cleaning products can you use? Well, I tell people never use household cleaning products with two exceptions. The first is a small bit of bleach that you can test, that do that biological human test, right? And ammonia. Now that ammonia needs to be diluted, right? So you do 1 cup of ammonia for 1 gallon of distilled water, and never use ammonia on metal, okay? Never, never, never. Also, never mix your bleach and ammonia, right? We'll talk a little bit about that later, but that's not real great for your health, okay? As in it'll kill you, okay? But if you're using ammonia, dilute it to 1 cup to 1 gallon of water, right? Not 1 gallon of ammonia in 1 cup of water. It's 1 cup of ammonia to 1 gallon of distilled water, because you don't want anything in that water that's going to cause an unexpected chemical reaction with the ammonia. Okay, so you want distilled water, ammonia, mix it. I will mix that in a large bucket here at home, and then I have it in spray bottles. and then I spray, scrub, scrub, right, from using ammonia. Now, there are some commercial cleaners that are, quote, approved, and by approved, I mean mentioned by the Veterans Administration for the cleaning and care of veteran grave markers. So the first one, the primary one, this is actually designed to do this thing that we are doing and cleaning markers, is D2. Okay. D2 cleaner, it's by far the top of the line. It's what you should be using if you're buying a commercial cleaner. Follow the directions on the package. You can buy it concentrated. You definitely want to not use it concentrated on the stone, but it will give you instructions on what to do. Follow those instructions. And there's Vulpex, Orvis, and PhotoFlow, which are chemicals that are designed for cleaning other things, but are okay because they are pH neutral to use on a stone. Okay, so D2 is the one you want to use. I should have that in bold. But if you've got Vulpex, Orvis, or PhotoFlow, which you can find those usually at craft stores, places like that, you can use those too. Okay. But again, your ammonia that you can buy at the grocery store, that gallon of ammonia for like $1.50, will do you just fine for most things as long as you're diluting it. Don't forget to dilute it. If you forget to dilute it, then you and I can't be friends anymore. Okay. I'm just kidding. We can still be friends, but I'll just hang that over your head for the rest of our friendship. All right. So when it comes to making repairs, because sometimes people go, oh, I want to fix the stone. It's broken or it's fallen over. What do I do? Well, never attempt to repair a grave marker unless you're beyond confident that you can do it. Okay. Because again, remember, it weighs 170 pounds per square foot. If you are not trained and confident, please contact a professional before attempting any repairs, right? Because some repairs require things like stone drills, lifting equipment, machinery, things like that, using clamps and special epoxies that are breathable epoxies, and using the tailings of your drillings to do other things. So if you're not comfortable and confident, then that's when you want to contact a professional, okay? Because remember, the key word, the mantra that we should be having is do no harm, right? We want to do absolutely no harm. I would rather there be a broken marker than one that somebody tries to repair and they don't know what they're doing, right? I've seen people take a marker and set it in cement, then we lose everything that's on the backside of that marker, right? So it's much better to take a broken, fallen marker that was an upright marker and have a professional repair it, right? So we had a marker from one of my ancestors that was buried in Pennsylvania that we hired a professional in Pennsylvania to go make those repairs, okay? Because it was not something that I could do in just a short visit that we would have there. So we hired a professional. They came and took care of it for us, and it was a relatively easy fix. Okay, they just had to fill in a couple of holes that were done when somebody else tried to repair it by putting metal brackets on the thing. So now let's talk follow-up survey. Okay, so what do we do after we're done? Well, we want to create a plan. We want to return to the cemetery about a month later. Okay, we want to re-examine the work that we did. We want to re-photograph everything. And we want to do, we want to do touch-up work if we need it. If we missed a spot, this is the time to go back and clean it up. And then you want to start, at this point, working with the owners to determine if the cemetery has an intrinsic historical value and get it on the Register of Historical Places, because that will provide a level of protection for the cemetery that it doesn't have otherwise. Okay, so work with the owners, whether that's a municipality, a private owner, whatever. Start working with them to determine if that's something that they want for their cemetery. Okay, so now let's talk about what should you have in your cleaning kit. Okay, so we're going to shift gears. We've talked about what we're going to do. We've done our pre-cleaning survey, our site photography. We've cleaned it, blah, blah, blah. We know how to do all that stuff. So we've got to put some stuff together. What are we going to gather into our cleaning kit? So you want different sizes and shapes of brushes, right? And use a variety of them. Go to the dollar store, go to hardware stores. They usually have a bin of stuff that they're just trying to offload. The right brush is going to be soft bristled, I always test it on my skin. If it's too abrasive for my skin, it's too abrasive for stone. Okay. And so just if you're like, oh, that hurts, it's going to hurt the stone too. Okay. So if you're going to purchase your solvents, never keep bleach and ammonia in the same container or near each other. If they two mix, they create chloramine gas, which is very toxic, and inhaling it even once can be fatal. Okay. So when I'm carrying bleach and and ammonia, I keep my ammonia in jugs, or it's already diluted with water and in spray bottles, but sometimes I'll have a jug with me. And then my ammonia, I'll keep in a much smaller container, or not my ammonia, my bleach, because I'm not going to need that much of it. I'm going to keep that in a much smaller container, a water, an airtight container that I will then put inside of a Ziploc bag and keep in a completely different part of my vehicle. Okay, so I don't want those two chemicals to be coming into contact with each other. Again, D2 is the recommended solvent, and you can purchase that through a number of different suppliers and things like that, which is what you want. So I want to give you an example of a marker. So this is for my ancestor, Betsy Gotham. This is in near Paw Paw, Michigan. And you can see there's this is not only a broken stone, okay, where it's snapped off. You can see the base still in there. And then this is the part that's snapped off and is laying flat on the ground. Now, this would probably weigh 250 pounds easily, right? So this is not something that I can just pick up and take home and repair. But I can clean it while I'm there. And so just using a little bit of ammonia and water, right, and a spray bottle and a soft bristled brush, this is what it ended up looking like, right? I didn't use a professional cleaner that would have gotten rid of some of the staining from the lichen and other stuff. But you can see it's much clearer and much less biological stuff that's on there, right? So you can see she died March 26, 1864 at the age of 76, okay? So if you're going to test water, all you need to do is just buy some fish tank testing strips from Walmart or any of your other big box stores that have pet stuff, like Meijer or wherever. And you want to check for that does pH and other factors, but pH is ultimately what you want, right? You want some buckets. Use plastic buckets, not metal, because metal can react with different chemicals. Buy some spray bottles. I buy them in bulk. You can buy them at the dollar store, which is fantastic, right? So here's an example of pH test strips. So you can see that one was done at the Quality Inn that I was staying at, because this was in a different state. And the other one was done at the church that's next to the cemetery. So you can see that it's completely different water chemically, right? I mean, the alkalinity of that water coming from the church is highly alkaline, versus low alkalinity from the municipal source coming through the Quality Inn. You can see that the one at the Quality Inn has a little bit higher chlorine and is a much harder water than the soft water that's coming from the church. The nitrites about the same thing with the nitrites, and the pH. The one at Quality Inn is neutral. The one at the church is highly alkaline, right? Not acidic, it's basic. So I've got some basic water that's very high in alkaline. And so my recommendation to this historical society was, don't use the water that's right next to the cemetery. Get a bunch of milk jugs, buckets, whatever you need to, from surrounding homes, test it, and bring that stuff in. Something's happening in the pipes at the church that's making that water dangerous to use for cemeteries, and probably not that great to drink either. Okay, so measuring tools that you want in your toolkit, you want rulers, tape measures, meter sticks. Use wooden ones. If there's a metal strip on the ruler, just go ahead and grab a pair of pliers and rip that metal strip out, because remember, no metal. Okay, if you can, don't use a metal tape measure. You can get cloth ones that you use for fabric and things like that. If it's got the little metal chads at the end, that's fine. You want binders and graph paper, like a 1/2-inch thick binder and graph paper and line paper to take notes on. Note down everything at first to learn what's important. Make graphs accurate and to scale if you're going to graph out a cemetery. things that you want to leave at home. The only metal tool that you need to bring with you is your cell phone. Okay. I always tell people bring helpers, not shortcuts. So bring extra people to help. Don't try to take shortcuts, right? So don't say, well, it's going to take me forever, so I'm just going to use this sandblaster to clean these stones. Don't. Leave behind your chainsaws, your metal clippers, all that kind of stuff, and just bring people. Bring Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, college students looking for service projects. They will work for pizza. There's a reason why college students are sort of the guinea pigs or the white rats of science, because they'll do anything for pizza. They'll participate in all kinds of strange things just to get free food. Okay. So some other things that you haven't thought of, right? So you may need some personal equipment. So if you're going to be out in the middle of nowhere for a while, do you have a porta potty, or do you want to bring a bucket with a toilet seat, right? You got to think these things through. Flag markers. You can make flag markers by using colored duct tape and thin wooden dowels. That's what I do. You can buy them from supply companies, I'm sure, that are metal and blah, blah, blah. I just use good old-fashioned pink and green duct tape and thin wooden dowels, and it makes it that much easier for me to find stuff. Now, one thing that you probably haven't thought about yet, and that is the police, the popo, the fuzz, the boys in blue, right? Always let the police know who you are and what you are doing if you're in a cemetery. Okay. I have had the police called on me several times cleaning, because people are guardians of these cemeteries. And if they don't know that you're there to clean it because you've been hired by a historical society, you need to do that. I was in a completely different state in a different town, and I stopped by the police station first and said, hey, just want to let you guys know I was hired by the Historical Society. I'm going to be doing some work in the cemetery. I have chemicals. None of them are dangerous. None of them can be turned into explosives. But I just wanted to let you know what was going on. And they appreciated that. I left them my card with my phone number. And sure enough, one day that I was there for 3 days. Whoop, whoop. A police officer came out, and he's like, hey, we got a call. Just needed to clear it off the thing, but I just kind of wanted to come out and see what you were doing and check things out. And I was like, oh, yeah, no problem. And talk to them. And so it was a much different conversation than having him come up and say, what are you doing? What are these chemicals? And a work stoppage, right? So, but work is going to stop. If people show up to mourn or there's a service, it's time to stop, right? It's time to stop cleaning. What you are doing is not as important as those people having time to grieve. Okay. So if you're interested, here's what I'd recommend for you for further study. Okay. So the first one is the Michigan Historic Cemeteries Preservation Guide by Greg King. You can find that online. Gravestone Preservation Primer by Lynette Strangstad. You can buy that on Amazon. Gravestone Photography and Documentation by Gary Clark. Also available on Amazon as an ebook. And then Stories in Stone, a Field Guide to Cemetery Symbols and Iconography by Doug Keister. And then some other things that you may want to consider are the Association of Gravestone Studies, of which I am a member. They have a great quarterly newsletter that talks about all kinds of things gravestone related. And then there's a website called Saving Graves, which is a fantastic website that's all about preserving and saving cemeteries. So sadly, because of that little technical thing, we don't have time to go over cemetery safety, but I will just do one quick one here at the end, the very last one, and that is this. If you are worried about zombies, ghouls, ghosts, vampires, and so forth, one thing to remember is to make sure that anybody's that you bring are not faster than you. Okay. Do not hesitate to trip your friend and leave them. If there's zombies coming after you, that's the time. So don't bring people that you love. Just bring people that you're friends with and you don't mind tripping. Okay. You can deal with what you've done when you go home and you're safe and you're sipping your favorite drink next to the pool. So with that, we'll take a look at any questions. I'll leave my contact information up here for you to take a look at. Feel free to send me any emails with questions. If you're on Twitter, you can send me a tweet. If you're on Facebook, send me a message. I'm not on Facebook very often anymore, but you can definitely try to reach out to me. Email is probably the easiest and best way to get a hold of me. So with that, do we have any questions, Melissa?
We don't yet. I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes, but
Okay.
those are great ideas. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You mentioned billion graves.
Billion graves. Yep.
Yep. Is that different from find a grave?
It is. So find a grave is sort of a virtual memorial, whereas billion graves uses GPS technology in your phone to digitally mark where those photographs were taken, and so it recreates the cemetery digitally. And so we used that not long ago. We were at a cemetery where some folks were buried, and we didn't know quite where they were because it was a rather large municipal cemetery. And so I just pulled up Billion Graves and said, "Oh, oop, here they are." And then I could send the coordinates of where that photograph was taken to my phone, and then it told me exactly where to drive to get to that location. And so
Okay.
that's an advantage. Now, Find a Grave, I think they've created an app that tries to do some of that, but Billion Graves was designed to do that from the beginning. And so I always recommend Billion Graves. I'm not affiliated with them. I don't get a kickback. I don't get anything. Just my opinion is they're doing what they were designed to do, which is, all that we can ask, right? So, that we do what we're designed to do. So
Great. Thank you so much for doing this for us today, Dan. If anyone has any questions, feel free to contact our information desk. I also have Mr. Earl's contact information. I can relay any questions or any comments that you have. So that was an awesome presentation.
thanks for having me.
So thank you very much. Again, if you have questions, drop an email or call the information desk at the library. So thank you very much for tuning in and watching our program. Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.